Alasdair.
Hello there, Sam.
I feel like the Daleks in Classic Who always talk like this.
You know what? My note this week was, why are we shouting? Why are we shouting?
I don't want to jump the gun in the episode, but the Dalek battle advisor, whatever, really sounded Davros. It was like, ooh, hello. It had a weird voice like that. And then you get to Davros, and I know it's the point that he's super Dalek-y, but he's just like,
yeah, it was a lot this week. It was a lot. Every time they came on, I also feel like the volume was suddenly like 20 decibels higher than it had been for anything else. I was like, wow! Whoa! That sounds like we're about to launch into a bad review, but a great episode this week. But yes, jumping the gun a little bit.
A little bit. How are you, my darling?
How am I? I'm all right. I've just been looking at all the stuff from Galley 1 because I'm absolutely gooped and gagged at who's there. We've got Colin Baker, Sylvester McCoy, Catherine Tate, Jenna Coleman, Stephen Moffat, Julie Gardner. This is our Dream Wholala guest list. Joel Collins, Louise Jameson, Katie Manning, Nicola Bryan.
People better be putting out flyers.
Oh my goodness, yeah, they're all there. Michelle Greenidge is there, Fraser Hines is there, Susan Twist is there. I just going through and I'm like,
there's always a twist.
They're all bloody there. It's an astonishing list. Yeah, very cool. If anyone's at Galley 1, let us know how you're finding it and what you're up to and where you're finding time to listen to Wholala. And please do feel free to advertise for us.
I'm pretty sure it was a Galley 1 last year or maybe even the year before, where somebody brought a load of flyers of like Doctor Who podcasts that you have to listen to. And Wholala was included on there. So I felt very grateful for that. So
it was. Yeah. So where is it this year? Where is it?
Where's the list?
Who took us off?
Oh, but no, I've been looking at all the stuff of Galley 1. It's been really interesting seeing all the people. It's really nice seeing something American focused as well, because I feel like so often, because it is a British show, that Doctor Who events tend to cater towards British audiences first. And seeing something that's like American driven for LA based fans felt very right, because Doctor Who is such a global show that it's nice that there's something purely dedicated, like made to that audience.
Yeah. Should we go in its last year? Because they've announced, sadly, that they're only going to do 3 more.
Oh.
So should we make sure that in the next 3 years, we go to at least one LA?
I would be very down for that. I'd be very down for that. I'm going to America for the first time this year. I'm going to New York. I'm going to New York later this year.
New York.
And I will be looking at all the Angels in Manhattan spots. But yeah, I'd love to. I would absolutely go to a Galley 1. Who would we see, dear listener? Who of you would we see at Galley 1?
But otherwise, I'm fine. Are you all right? Are you well?
Yeah, no, I'm fine. I had a very nice weekend. We had a very lovely Valentine's Day.
Yes.
Actually, no, I take that back. We had a very nice Valentine's Saturday. My Valentine's Day was about 3 hours of overtime at work and getting in at like 10 p.m. It's fine, it's gone. But no, I'm actually really good. I feel like work's in a good spot. Do you know what? Actually, why I'm buzzing and in a good mood? My Build Your Own Dalek kit for this month came in today.
Yes.
So I was building that when you called me to do this. And for anyone, I'd love to hear, lovely listeners, a couple of you have reached out to us on socials to let us know that you're ordering it as well. It's from Hatchet Partworks, and they basically do lots of like magazines with building models, and I know they have one for like a Xenomorph, and they have a Disney doll's house and stuff, but it's build your own Dalek to half the scale of a full-size Dalek, and by the time you finish it, we've mentioned it on the pod before, but it will be 80 centimeters tall. Like the chest opens, it reveals the mutant in between, it moves around, there's different attachments for the arm. It will cost about 1,500 quid by the end, but I'm really enjoying making it. It's bringing me a lot of joy.
But it's great. You're just on a huge Klarna plan.
Exactly.
Interest-free.
Exactly, yeah. I don't know if the listeners know this. I don't even drink coffee, so this is my equivalent of like buying a couple coffees out a week.
Sorry, I took a big sip of tea as you were talking. Yes, and also I will say this: I drink probably 2 or 3 coffees a day, and often, if I'm in the office, especially, I'll sometimes buy at least 2. And so, yes, I mean, funds wise, you're absolutely right to do that. The maths is mathsing for me.
The maths is mathsing. It is girl math, but it is mathsing.
It's mathsing. It's mathsing. You know, that's probably also why you have so much more natural energy than me. I'm completely dependent on caffeine at this point.
Someone asked me that at work the other day. They were like, well, what do you do when you're tired? And I was like,
sleep.
I'm just
rest.
tired. I feel the fact I'm tired. And they're like, so gag. But then there's one guy. There's one guy in our accounts department. He's called Kwang. And every time I got to him, he's like, hi, Sam. I'm like, hey, Kwang, how are you? And he's like, I'm good. Oh, you look tired today. And he keeps doing it. He has done it multiple times. And I'm just like, dude, Leave me alone.
Leave me alone. Every time I see my mum, it's like one of two things. It's either like, oh, you look fantastic. Oh my God. Whatever you've done with your skin and your hair, brilliant. Like, you look so, yes. Last time I saw her, she's like,
Or
your eyes look tired. Your eyes look very tired. And it'll be always a day that I think I look fresh. And I'll be like, oh, I see.
brought right back down to earth.
Right back down to earth. Okay.
Oh, Guild. Well, I'm also in a good mood because this could sound bad. I was going to say because we watched a good episode of Doctor Who this week.
Yeah.
We watch good episodes of Doctor Who all the time. That's not true, but I really, really loved this week's episode of Doctor Who we watched for Wholala. I was very excited to watch it. I completely forgot I had seen this before. I had a video set. I think it was for the 30th anniversary. It was in like a metal tin. Please, if you're listening to this and you have this, send me photos of it. And I had a couple videos, and one of them was definitely Remembrance of the Daleks, and I had seen on VHS, but I hadn't seen it since I was like 10. And it was just a really good episode of Doctor Who, and I knew it would be because when we posted on our socials that we were going to watch this, normally when we're watching an episode of Classic Who, we have like a few responses and people are like, oh yeah, like I know this, like not many people remember this, but blah, 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 blah. With this one, we've had like countless people connect to us on Blue Sky, on X, people were reaching out.
Yeah. This is a really iconic story. I think it's rated as one of the greatest. And the other thing that's great for the Wholala audience, and a lot of us, I think, are post-2005 fans, people do say this is a great gateway, actually, if you're trying to get into dipping your toe into Classic Who, rather than going all the way back to the 60s, actually starting here is quite good because it's quite a good bridge across to 2005. But it's funny, we've got here kind of last in our lineup. We've been watching Doctors 1 to 7, and we're here last.
I know. It is our final of the Doctors. We will have now seen at least one episode of every single Doctor on Wholala. I did want to read an email that we got sent by Anya in Hunt on wholalapod@gmail.com. They were suggesting some other great 7th Doctor stories. They said, hey, Survival is the best choice in my opinion. It's the last story of Classic Who. I'll also give a fun fact for Enlightenment, which you may want to cover. That's a 5th Doctor story. It's the first Doctor Who story to be written and directed by a woman. To go on to about the 7th Doctor episodes, they say there are only 12 stories. Time in the Rani is the 7th Doctor's debut. Paradise Towers has some fun bits, and Delta and Bannerman is quite camp. Dragonfire introduces Ace and says goodbye to Mel. Remembrance of the Daleks is a classic. That is, if you haven't realised, the one we're covering today. Happiness Patrol has a minor spoiler. The TARDIS is painted pink. The Silver Nemesis has Cybermen and is the 25th anniversary special. The Greatest Show in the Galaxy has a circus. Battlefield is the last appearance of the Brigadier in Doctor Who. The Curse of Fenric is one you'll probably get suggested a lot. Ghostlight has one well-known thing that I won't say, but definitely is a story that has a lot more companion stuff with Ace. And Survival is the final one. There are some cats. So thank you for that breakdown through all of the 7th Doctor's era. I did appreciate that, and that did help lead us into deciding this one. But I also feel like we got some really great suggestions from everyone, but I was kind of gunning for this, and I was like, I really want to do Remembrance.
Yeah, this was great. I mean, Survival was the other suggestion that came up, and exactly like you said, I think we were thinking maybe that's good if we cover like the end of Who and the final series. I have so many questions about that as well. Like, did they know that it was the last series when they were like writing and producing it and filming it? I guess they had some idea, but yeah.
Yeah, it's one that I want to... For this one, we wanted to cover a good 7th Doctor story, and there's tons of good 7th Doctor stories, but this is one that we were kind of itching to do, and I feel like when we do finally look at Survival, it's because I want to have given it the time to research into it being the final episode of Classic Who, and give that the time it deserves. But yeah, I mean, having especially now looked at every other Doctor's era, and having watched more diverse Classic Who than I think I ever have through doing this little mini-series, I'm excited to jump into talking about this one.
Very much so, very much so.
Well, for anyone who hasn't realised, we are in fact talking about Remembrance of the Daleks. It's a 7th Doctor era story that went from the 5th of October to 26th of October 1988. It was written by Ben Aronovich, directed by Andrew Morgan, then uncredited John Nathan Turner. The viewership ranged from 5 to 5.8 million throughout the episodes. There's a 4-episode serial, and it has an IMDb score of 8.4 out of 10.
Very strong. Yes, in reader polls conducted by Doctor Who Mag from 98 onwards, Remembrance of the Daleks has been consistently voted as one of the greatest Doctor Who stories of all time.
Exactly. And genuinely, like after watching this, Rightfully bloody so. Like, I had to really refresh my
Rightfully
memory
so.
on it, but rightly bloody so.
Yeah, it wasn't my first time watching it, but you know what my issue is giving something my full attention. And giving it my full attention, I really, really, really enjoyed it. There were parts of the plot that I definitely didn't pick up last time. I can't remember when I watched it, but clearly I just wasn't giving it everything. I think as well, when people prime you for it's a great story, and you then are like, okay, like let me really like pay attention to what's being done here. And I think especially in the context as well of us having arrived here and moved through the eras and through the years, it's paid off nicely.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm pretty sure the reason you watched this originally is because we were doing series one, like season one of Doctor Who, watching series one of because we were doing season one of Wholala, watching series one of Doctor Who. And you were like, I've watched loads of New Who, I want to watch a classic. And you had seen that this was a good episode. And I remember you jumping into it being like, Sam, it's really good. And I was like, yeah, no, I'll get to it. 2 years later,
I don't remember telling you that. That's great. Oh, I liked it then as well. Never mind. I always liked it. Taste. Brilliant.
Taste. Well, for anyone who wants to recap this story, genuinely, if you have iPlayer, please like go watch it. If you like New Who, you will really like this one. It's very, very good. But if you want a quick recap of the story, here you go.
Here you go. It's written by me this week, so good luck, everyone. The Doctor and Ace land in Shoreditch, 1963, back to where the Doctor's very first adventure began. Well, not chronologically his first adventure, from our perspective. But something's not quite right. The military, led by Group Captain Gilmore, is investigating strange magnetic fluctuations, and it all leads to Coal Hill School. Turns out there's a transmat device hidden in the basement, linked to a Dalek ship in orbit. Even worse, two rival factions are on Earth. The Imperial Daleks, who serve the Dalek Emperor, and the Renegade Daleks, who reject them. And they're both after the same prize, the Hand of Omega, a powerful Time Lord device that the Doctor left behind on a previous visit.
The Renegades have a human ally, Sergeant Mike Smith, a trusted member of Gilmore's team who is secretly working with the fascist group. The fascist group is led by Radcliffe, a local businessman using his connections to support the Renegade Daleks, believing he's aligned with them. But he's not the one in charge. The real leader of the Renegades is a Dalek battle computer, which has been wired into the mind of a schoolgirl, allowing it to process information and make tactical decisions.
The Doctor hides the Hand of Omega in a cemetery, but Ratcliffe and the Renegades manage to steal it first, thanks to Mike's betrayal. The Imperials, determined to get their plungers on it, arrive in full force, leading to an all-out battle with the Renegades. The fight escalates when the Imperials deploy the Special Weapons Dalek, a walking tank with no head and a giant energy cannon. With the battlefield cleared, the Imperials recover the hand and transmit it to their orbiting mothership. The mothership preparing to take it back to Skaro.
Meanwhile, Ace follows Smith, who still has the Renegade's time controller, a crucial component in their strategy. The Doctor contacts the Dalek Emperor, only for it to be revealed that it's not just any Emperor, it's Davros, baby! He's back and more unhinged than ever. He plans to use the Hand of Omega to harness the power of a star to ensure the Dalek supremacy over all life. The Doctor seems to be terrified of his plans, baiting him into activating the hand.
I love the way we keep changing Omega, 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 all of the above. Omega 3. Davros launches the Hand of Omega, watching in horror as it turns on him. Instead of granting unlimited power, it forces Skaro's sun to go supernova, scorching the entire planet. The shockwave destroys the Dalek mothership, and Davros barely escapes in a life pod. The hand then quietly returns to Gallifrey. Its job done.
Back on Earth, the fallout continues. The schoolgirl, still under Dalek influence, tracks down Smith and kills him. Ratcliffe tries to free with the time controller, but is stopped by the schoolgirl, who executes him without hesitation. The Doctor confronts the last surviving renegade, the Supreme Dalek, and convinces it that the Daleks have lost. It has an existential crisis which causes it to combust. Same, girl, same. The schoolgirl collapses, freed from control, but left pretty traumatized.
As the dust settles, Ace and the Doctor slip away from Smith's funeral. Ace, still shaken, asks if they did the right thing. The Doctor's answer? Time will tell. It always does.
It always does. And let me tell you, the time told the clock, and the clock struck Time War. It struck Time War.
It struck Time War.
Oh, well, before we get into our thoughts, we reached out to you on Blue Sky and X to ask what you thought, and you had lots of thoughts.
Okay, over on X, here's what Humphys had to say. The Doctor Who pod, an imposter, said, great story, bad signage. White and gold Daleks look awesome. Weapons Dalek is wobbly and odd. Oh my god, sacrilege, can't believe. Tricky Dicky at Designer Dick. Love that name. One of my favourites. The director was barred from being asked back because he went 13k over budget shooting all the Dalek combat stuff, but the expense shows in the final product, which isn't something you could often say about Doctor Who in the late 1980s. I'm so glad he went over budget. Very me with my approach to budgets. Dave is a generic name, said, a great story in many ways, but oddly bad in the way it treats the Daleks. Ron said, this is one of my favourite Doctor Who stories. Rihanna said, I think landmark is the word. There's so much more to it than he blew up Skaro. The cafe scene was so delicate and really the first of its kind in the history of the show. Then the ending where Ace starts to lose faith is great. Did we do good here, Professor? Iconic. Ian said, totally excellent. Disappointing that such straightforward, exciting storytelling has been parked for now. What we lost by moving from 25 minutes to 50. A couple more. Wandering Tiger said, joint best ever. Simon said, pure genius. Rowan said, my all-time favourite Who story. Zach said, one of the best ever made. A very clear sign of the exciting direction the show was headed before it got tragically axed. Oof, ran out of breath. Unapologetically political, mature story with some great dialogue and performances, good mystery without focusing on the Doctor too much. Last one, sorry. Sam said, love this story. That little Dalek girl went through trauma. And it's spelled trauma.
That she did. Well, if you thought those were all of our messages, you were wrong, because now we're jumping to Blue Sky. Hamish Steele said, love it. I remember when I saw it on my classic Who journey and was actually so impressed by the Dalek visuals. So impressed by the visual of the Dalek's shuttle, an effect I didn't even think that New Who could achieve as well as it does. Also worth reading up on the actor Dursley McLinden. He was a partial inspiration for Ollie Alexander's character, and it's a sin. He absolutely was. We will be diving into that. Peter said, it punches so high, and I always think of the interview where Sylvester says he objected to blowing up a Dalek with a bazooka, so that was given to Ace, but the writers got their own back by having him talk the Supreme to death. Also, the twink being a fascist is so upsetting, but also unsurprising. Ethan, friend of the pod, said, they're all friends of the pod. You're all friends of the pod, you are. One of my favourite stories, you're all Hoomfies. Can we pen that, like, Hoomfies is the word? Now we're going to start coining that phrase.
I stole it today. I just saw it and I've just stolen that. So it's not even mine.
You got it from a Hoomfie. Ethan said, one of my favourite stories, along with one of my favourite duos. A Dalek Civil War is such a juicy idea for a story. It reminds me of the remote-controlled Dalek battle packs that we'd get. I love how much of a master manipulator the Doctor is, making sure that his plans come together. And of course, Ace beating up a Dalek with a baseball bat really solidified her as one of the most iconic companions within just her second story. That's mad that this is her second story. That's bananas.
I love it.
Matt said, I really don't care for it, to be honest, but it's got Geoffrey from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and unlimited rice pudding. Our favourite X and Blue Sky handle, Y-Drag, said, I'm so sorry and you've never corrected us, but please, I love you. I haven't seen it in years and I won't reach for it on my full old Who. I haven't seen it for years, and I won't reach it on my full old Who watch for a while, but I watched this loads of the time as a kid. I think it was probably my favourite Doctor Who story for most of my life. It's super iconic, includes my favourite Dalek, the Heavy Weapons Dalek, and overall just great Dalek designs. Lots of good memory watching it on DVD as a kid. Kenny Koala, we are getting there. Kenny Koala said, honestly, I really like the Seventh Doctor, and I feel it's a real shame we only got 3 series with him before the BBC cancelled Doctor Who, because the creativity and storytelling in episodes such as this is really good, and I also really like Ace. O. Jackson Jr. said, the GOAT! And finally, Tom said, the first ever classic story I watched as a kid, packed with plenty of action, and the Seven and Ace dynamic is so much fun that I barely noticed the format change compared to New Who. Fantastic story, great guest characters, and very high up on my list of favourites of the entire show. 10 out of 10.
Delicious. I love it. You know what's so funny as well? Like, you know that commentary in that behind the scenes where you have like Phil Collinson, Julie Gardner, and I've forgotten his name, but there's another producer, and they're talking about like what happened to Classic Who and how it got cancelled, and they're all sat on the unit set, and they're like, yeah, it kind of lost its way a bit. It becomes sort of a bit of a parody of itself. And it's funny, like, from what I'm really hearing and what I'm seeing as well so far in the one story we've seen of this, which is that this appears to be some of the most 2005 adjacent content in the whole thing. So I don't know if it's like, I mean, and it's not for this episode really for us to dissect it, but if the issue was more that Doctor Who had developed a bit of a reputation, more than what Doctor Who was actually producing at this point, because the impression you're left with is that, like, this series and the series after is what really dropped the ball, but it doesn't feel like that's true.
It's a weird one. I feel like the quote-unquote damage was done a lot through the Sixth Doctor's era, and then the weird hiatus that it had after that, and then it came back, and you had like, we haven't watched Time and the Rani yet, but the Time and Rani like campery that I don't necessarily think they were going for. And then what people really remember is Survival, and much as I hear it's a great episode, I've not seen it myself, and I'm excited to watch it for the pod. It's like the Master turns into a cheetah person, and it's all quite camp.
Right.
And I think that camp was something that they were trying to avoid. There's that great behind the scenes clip of when they were doing the Children in Need 30th anniversary special, Dimensions in Time, where you have the Rani in the TARDIS, and the director says, "Oh, you're being a bit camp," and she's like, "Camp? I thought this was Doctor Who." And I think that was something that they wanted to avoid, which is why Series 1, 2005, is so like grungy and dark. But when you watch episodes like this and it ends on the note that it does, which we'll get into, it just I couldn't think that that's further from what they were saying. I couldn't disagree more.
You're right, and that's the thing, is we're looking at one story, not a series, and one of the most highly regarded episodes. So, yeah, it's interesting. So,
Yeah.
I think to go cycle right back to the start for me, should we talk about titles? Because these titles, they're doing a lot. A lot is happening.
They are long. I hope CGI has entered the chat.
CGI has entered the chat. Computer graphics are here, baby. 3D effects have arrived, and they're using all of them. They painted McCoy's face silver. The logo is absolutely horrible. It's spinning.
I kind of like it. I like them all, but I kind of like that. I know what you mean about like the swishy, like Doctor Who, but yeah. I don't know. I like it.
It's very 80s. Like every era they go through, they just decide to like reflect the era they're in. I think they're not trying to make something kind of timeless at this point. They're like, nah, it's the 80s, baby.
It's the 80s.
So I you know, I'm very sympathetic to the theme though. I do like it. I mean, it's loud, it's howling, it's
extended as well. You go into like do 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 do, and I'm like in the opening titles.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like it. I mean, it's doing a lot. That was my first thought going in. I was like, whoa.
Yeah. Well, what I noticed even before the titles was it was nice to get a pre-titles bit. It's weird not jumping straight in with the title sequence in Classic Who, but it's super cinematic. It made me feel very like Star Wars, like the panning back shot of Earth with the Dalek spaceship coming over the top. Back shots from the Dalek! It just seemed really, really cool. And then it was very cinematic. And then, like, when you open the episode and that, like, cuts into, like, Coal Hill School, where it almost felt to me watching it like this was more. If I had to guess what was the anniversary special, I'd say this was the anniversary special because it's a big Dalek Time Lord Doctor battle with loads of references and callbacks to Doctor coming back. Like they're in Coal Hill School, you know, they talk about there's the blind vicar and he's like, "Oh Doctor, your voice has changed," and someone on the phone's like, "I thought you said he was like an old man with grey hair." And did you catch the bit with the TV where Ace is walking up the room and it's like, "Now a brand new sci-fi drama starting called Dot," and then it cuts.
Oh yes, I did. It was weird. It went like quite meta for a second there, where it was like Doctor Who was on in Doctor Who.
Yeah.
I didn't hate it though, because I think it left it and let it sit as
they
like
didn't say
were they
Doctor
say
Who.
That? And it just is one of those little moments that kind of just makes you curious more than, wait, how is that possible? You know, you're just like, wait, were they gonna, does it exist? Is this? It's just one of those things that's forever unanswered that I quite like. It's quite mysterious the way they do it. So I really enjoyed that. Yeah, but Doctor Who exists within Doctor Who.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, who knows? One day we'll be watching an episode of, you know, Ncuti Gatwa and suddenly he's watching Doctor Who. It could happen. It can happen. One thing I want to jump into just from the offset, we've kind of touched on it before, is the relationship between Ace and the Seventh Doctor. I had no idea this was only their second episode together. I know that it's the first episode of season 25. Oh God, if I've got that wrong now, someone's going to jump at me, but I'm pretty sure it is. And I just think it corrects everything that I didn't love about the relationship between the Sixth Doctor and Perry. They do bicker, they do argue, like, but they also have like quite a respect for each other, and you can tell they like each other. I like the bit when the Doctor's like, "Well, go get food then," and Ace wanders off, and he's like, "Ace," and she's like, "What?" And he's like, "Money," and he goes to give the money, and she's like, "Oh, thank you."
Yeah.
And later you get that scene of them in the car where the doctor's like, Ace, do you drive? And she's like, yes, why? And he's like, I thought so. So they go in the car and she's driving. And then he's like moaning about her driving. And she's like, well, if you don't like it that much, you drive. We cut out the car, cut back in the car. Suddenly he's driving. And there's like no comment on it. It's just what I think they have such... I was like genuinely entertained by their relationship.
Yeah, I immediately like this doctor. Thank God. I mean, compared to what we'd seen, that they mellowed him out. Because this relationship with the companion, for me, is far improved. Like, I really like that this is more mentor-mentee. It's not necessarily grandfatherly, but he's got this kind of like... She can be really cheeky, but he doesn't snap at her. It's more of quite a gentle disapproval. Like, oh, Ace. Like, oh...
Ace, give me some of that Nitro 9 that you're not carrying.
Exactly. Like, I know you're up to no good. All right, I know what you're doing, and I don't approve, and you know I don't approve. So I really like that relationship between the two of them. I like it's a little bit softened, and it may be controversial, but I also feel that he would have been a really great Seventh Doctor had he played this like 10, 20 years ago, like Sylvester McCoy 10, 20 years ago as a slightly older man doing the same
You mean like if Sylvester
performance.
McCoy came in New Who, like maybe they brought him back and like ignored the movie or something?
I just think if we could, or even if we could put an older Sylvester McCoy in the past in the 80s, you know, like the Sylvester McCoy of The Hobbit. If we could if we could put him into it, and he did the same performance, but as a slightly older man, I think for me it would hit even harder. But I really like him. I think like he's one of those people as they've got older as well. Like his eccentricity only feels more real because remember I told you this. I saw him. What event were we at? Was it LFCC?
It was yeah, like London Comic Con.
London Film Comic Con, yeah. And I was walking somewhere without you in my kilt, and I went past Sylvester McCoy, who was being escorted somewhere, but he'd walked slightly ahead of his escort, and he was clearly getting a bit lost, and he nearly collided with me, and he just kind of looked me right in the eyes, and he just went, whoa! And I can't describe, like, the feeling of looking at this man. He looked, in that moment to me, so short. He looked himself like a hobbit. It was just like, he was so adorable. Yeah. Oh, he's just the funniest guy. And I was like, oh, just saw Sylvester McCoy. But yeah, I very much warmed to him.
Yeah, it's so funny. I remember talking to you like, I've just bumped into Sylvester McCoy. And I was like, what? Like, how did you manage that? I turned my back for 3 seconds.
How did you manage that?
Oh, I don't know. But no, he's really great in this episode. I think Ace is really fun. She does feel similar to kind of like Sarah Jane, I guess. And even more so than Sarah Jane, like a fully fledged character. And someone who could much more easily be copied and pasted into a New Who story. She's super like chatty. She's independent. Like I like even the bit when she's in the cafe and she just keeps going up to Guy to ask for toast. Like she's not going to let it slide that he's left her and forgotten her. She's like, hey, like can I have my toast? And she just keeps going back round for it. And then, like, obviously, like, we'll get to it, I'm kind of jumping ahead, but the scene with her and the Dalek and the baseball bat, it's classic, it's iconic. Like, her just beating this Dalek to death with a baseball bat is just so cool. And she carries the boombox around with her and jumps through windows. And I just think that she, again, like, to harken on what people are saying, when they were messaging us on socials, I just feel robbed of more. I mean, I say I feel robbed. We watched one episode of this and we have, like, 2 full seasons with them, but I feel like they kind of were, like, cut in their prime, and we didn't get a full run of the Doctor and Ace in the way that we would have if the show hadn't been cancelled.
Yeah, I immediately like Ace. There's things she says that humour me hugely. Later on, who does she say it to? I think she says it to Mike when she realises he's working with the Daleks, and she's like, do me a favour and drown yourself. And I was like, Jesus, Ace! But she's so, she's got such a, like, rebellious feeling. It feels like she feels like quite a rule breaker in a way that he'd really like struggle with and have to rein in, but in a way that she'd challenge him in all the right ways. And it feels like this Doctor is in a good place to try and mentor this companion as well, and clearly cares for her. So they bounce off each other well. Sophie Aldred as well. I really love as a person, and I also have just really fond memories of her voice from like children's TV back in the day. I remember like being ill from school, and on like BBC Children's, she'd often be doing a lot of like the educational programming, and her voice is just very distinctive to me from that. She just has a very soothing tone. I find even in this, I like listening to Sophie Aldred as well.
I know. I remember she did a video for Gallicab once. I mean, she's been to Gallicabs now too, but she did a video for Gallicab like in her garden. Oh no, it wasn't Gallicab. It was a quiz of Rassilon where they had a section where she was giving one of the questions, but she just recorded it in her garden. She was like, "Hello, everybody. It's Sophie Aldred, also known as Ace," and like I just love her slipping between the two. There's a bit in this episode that's so acey. I love it. Ace like punches that fascist guy in the stomach, and he's like, "Ooh!" and he kills over. And the doctor comes up and he's like, "Ace, what's going on? What's wrong with him?" And she goes, "Stomach ache." I just think that's so funny.
I love it so much. Should we jump a bit into the story?
Let's jump into the story. Let's talk about Daleks and this creepy ass girl that keeps running around.
Yes. So right at the start, the Doctor kind of runs into the military, who are in the most obvious spy vehicle I've ever seen in my life, with this massive antenna on the roof, who do not detect the Doctor running laps of the car, jumping on the roof, playing with the antenna. They have no idea he's there. And then he kind of just hops in the back of the car and he's like, "Hello." And he starts tinkering, and they kind of just accept him being there. And they're like, "Who are you?" He's like, "I'm the Doctor." They're like, "Right." And then they just sort of let him join from that point on. But they seem to be the military, but not UNIT, which is interesting.
It's weird. I was looking into this because there's this bit even where the Doctor like miscalls someone the Brigadier, and he calls someone the Brigadier. I was reading into this later, and the military personnel they're quite deliberately reminiscent of Unit Regulus. So, like the group captain Gilmore is like the Brigadier. He's the guy the Doctor calls Brigadier. Rachel Jensen, she's kind of emblematic of Liz Shaw. Alison being Joe Grant. Sergeant Mike Smith is like a mixture of Captain Yates and Sergeant Benton. So even though they're not UNIT, I think the reason they're not UNIT is because either UNIT at this point didn't exist. I can't remember if it had existed by this point, or it was just so early in like the Doctor's time stream that they're aware of like the William Hartnell First Doctor. Maybe they just didn't want to muddle those two things together and keep them all quite separate.
You're so right. I completely forgot where we are in time, and that's why it's not UNIT, isn't it? It's because it's pre-UNIT. And you're right that they basically just said, here are the archetypes of all the characters from UNIT. They're not UNIT, but you can identify them as such, you know? I really like that, though, because I didn't notice either that we had like a stand-in for Joe either until you just said it. And I'm like, of course, that's the Joe. That's the Harry. They've all got a role there.
Again, it makes it feel like an anniversary special.
It's
so weird. I think it's... it wasn't even the anniversary year. It was 1988. It's so... weird. Like it's super anniversary like.
Let's count. What's 88 minus 25?
Oh, it was the year of the 25th anniversary.
Okay, there we go. But yes, it was very Liz Shaw adjacent. Someone said they felt that she was like almost like half Liz Shaw, half Barbara, which is quite a nice way of looking at it as well. But
I like that.
She's like basically got the same backstory as well. I feel like no one was drawing this comparison when I looked it up. I was like, wait, is this meant to be Liz Shaw? And so she's the chief scientific advisor. She's been drafted and dragged down from Cambridge. She's basically following the same plot points that Liz Shaw had when she got drafted into
Are we in Inferno? Is this an alternate universe?
Exactly. But she was one of these minor characters who was really memorable and I really enjoyed. I think it's quite easy to gravitate to the character who trusts the Doctor. That's always a goodie that we like. There's always someone who's like, well, clearly the Doctor's the only one who knows what's going on here, so we need to listen to him. Like, it's never the military guy who's like, Doctor, I will not have you. It's never that person we warm to.
Yeah, no.
Well, not initially anyway, in the case of the Brigadier. But it felt like she was so naturally placed in the story. Maybe it's because she fills that role that we're so familiar with. It felt like we'd known her for far more than just one story as well. So I really liked her inclusion.
Yeah, no, I like that they carry along things like the Doctor has a real disdain for the military. It's weird. There's a lot of things that like carry on from the Doctor that we knew by this point. And then also, like we were saying, the Doctor coming up. Like even things like the Doctor gets mistaken for the caretaker. And I know that that probably means that in New Who, they were leaning into that plot point. So, like, obviously, Stephen Moffat had seen Remembrance of the Daleks. So when the Doctor takes the role of the caretaker at
Yeah.
Coal Hill School, he'd have known. But
Yeah.
I'm sat here being like, oh my God, it's like they predicted the future.
That's what I was doing as well. I was like, oh my God,
They
he's
knew.
the caretaker.
They knew.
I know, I did the same thing.
Yeah.
I was like, oh yes, because this was first.
Yeah, exactly. But I like talking about linking into other episodes, them linking to older episodes and the Hand of Omega having been left behind on a previous venture. And someone listeners will tell us, I'm not too sure, because Omega has featured in 2 Doctor Who serials. It was the 3 Doctors, which was the first anniversary special, and then a fifth Doctor story. And I don't know if the Hand of Omega had featured in another episode outside of those 2. It may have, it may not have, I don't know. I do think Omega needs to come back because, actually, did you know Omega has come back in New Who already?
Oh, really? How so?
Yeah. In the Timeless Children storyline, there's that shot where the 3 Gallifreyans, when they're talking about like the Time Lords creating their society, and the 3 Gallifreyans are walking through the corridor, and apparently it's meant to be Tecteun, Rassilon, and Omega, the 3 of them walking through the corridor. But I think that Omega is such an interesting villain and has so much lore to them that they definitely need to come back, but that's I'll get into that another time. But I like that it's Time Lord piece of technology that sparks the need for the Daleks to come into this story.
Yes, it makes sense to me. And like we were saying, like, it doesn't, I mean, like, oh, it sets up the Time War. Obviously, it was never meant to set up the Time War, but working backwards, the Time War slots in really nicely after the story. With the Hand of Omega, had the same thoughts. I was like, is there something that I've missed? Because it seemed like this very established piece of technology. And so when they bring up the Hand of Omega, remember I left it here before, and I was thinking, did we? I was like, maybe I missed this plot point. But by the end, it's clearer that I think this is new for this story. When I looked it up, it seems that this is specific to the story. And I like that they are able quite early, before they actually spell out, this is something Omega used to build a supernova and da-da-da-da-da-da. They make clear on a very small scale that this is like, it's a tool, because they can, and it's obviously like very, very advanced technology. He can kind of whisper to it like, right, here's a baseball bat. You know what to do with this. And out comes a baseball bat, and suddenly you're able to like batter a Dalek to death with it. So it can, it's clearly a very sophisticated, futuristic piece of technology. And it's obviously very mysterious because it looks like a fucking floating coffin with smoke. And also the visual of that, the aesthetic of this spooky, rusty coffin floating around. I was like, yes!
Especially through a graveyard.
Gag. Very cool idea. And like we were saying as well, like I love talking about Time Lord engineering, the Daleks trying to play catch up. Like even the fact in this story they talk about the Daleks having a very crude version of time travel. Ace is like, but they have time travel, and he's like, no, it's not the same thing. It's like time tunnels. It's not quite what we've got. It's not fully fledged time travel. It's it's not the real thing. And also what you're saying there as well about bringing back Omega. What's interesting in the way that he's described in these stories is those kind of like the founding Time Lords always described as almost like mythological creatures, like these, that they could just kind of sculpt stars, and they could conduct experiments with supernovas and discover time travel, and all these things that they do, and they almost don't sound they sound godlike. And so bringing that character kind of back into a story would be really interesting, because you'd either have to lean in and go full, like this is like a god we're dealing with of a person, or indeed are they actually someone who's just on the Doctor's level and just using their powers in a different way. But there's a lot of fun you can have with the Time Lords, and once again I'm saying bring them back. I mean, this, to be honest, I think if they wanted to make Doctor Who go in the fantasy direction as they are, I don't think it was the right decision to, in season 1, like new season 1, to have like pushed me like the god of all gods, the being of all beings, the top of the top was a dog. I don't think that's the way that you go. I think they could have had it stretch over 3 seasons and have the end of season 3 show that Omega was like the big bad pulling all these strings as like the closest thing to a god that the Doctor's ever met. Like I know it's just another Gallifreyan, another Time Lord, but it is an entity with power unbeknownst to even the Doctor, and I think that could be where you slot them in again. Because what's happened, Sam? The Rani's resurrected the Time Lords.
The Rani has resurrected the Time Lords with her experiments, because we know that the Time Lords love to experiment like Tecteun, because Tecteun was the Rani.
that's what we're trying to do the whole time, is we're trying to stop the Rani from resurrecting the Time Lords unsuccessfully. The Time Lords come back, and then we have to deal with Omega. That's a great story. Let's lock it in. Lock it in. Write that down.
I just think somebody needs to give us the keys to the castle, please.
You know, like we're saying all this, and it probably sounds like the like most disgusting like fan fiction nonsense, but equally, like, I want to see it. One more thing as well about the Hand of Omega, beyond the effects and the floating, which was sick. I really like the Hand of Omega, like being alive. Like he's like, you know what to do, don't you? Of course. And then it's going like it's like chattering back. And then ultimately it goes and scorches a planet and then flies off to Gallifrey. And I'm like, that's quite diabolical, actually.
Yeah, exactly. It's really interesting. And it made me, as a New Who fan, think of the Genesis arc, where the Daleks know that they can benefit from having a piece of technology from the Time Lords, because even though, you know, the only emotion they feel is hate, jealousy is definitely there as well, and they're envious of what the Time Lords have above them. And I feel like a lot of that is driven from Davros and what Davros wants, because he's not like a quote unquote pure Dalek.
Yes.
And it's interesting. Do you mind if I segue more into the Daleks?
Oh, please.
I'm going to jump in, because the Daleks in this, as we've said before, they feel the closest to the New Who Daleks, even to the level of like the exterminate noise is the same. There's certain like stings they use in the music that feel super, super serious, when it's a really good bridge from classic Who and modern Who. We always talk about how the Daleks feel silly now, and you can't make the Daleks scary, or you can't make them threatening. Much as I don't think they're scary, I feel like in this episode, the Daleks are such a threat. Like, opening up, like, you know, there's this one being that's killed all these people, and we don't see it for ages, and then we find out it's a Dalek. I think that creates a base threatening undertone at the beginning. It sort of has a really good tone from the off. And then when you add, new at the time, certainly elements of like the Dalek flying and some really, really good like duffs in this, like the Dalek flying at the Doctor, which it's never done before, and scream exterminate. That bit with Ace where 3 Daleks are cornering her and they're all screaming like exterminate, exterminate her. Having those Dalek focused like cliffhangers really led me into feeling threat and danger from these Daleks, which I don't think I'd felt in a while.
Yeah, I think if nothing else, they innovate with the Daleks in a very nice way in this one. Like, maybe the goal doesn't need to be how do we make them scary, as much as also like how do we do something smart and interesting with them, and how do we also like weave it into a good social commentary, which they do quite well in this one. The stairs gag, oh my god, when he's like, hey, he's up on that, and his performance does make me laugh, but it's good because he's desperate. But he kind of just just doesn't actually like form words. Eh? And and then he gets out of it quite easily after that. But the cliffhangers in Classic Who as well are very easily resolved, which I enjoy. Obviously, they're going to be, but yeah, there's some really good bits that make the Daleks creepy in this in a way that makes me almost like feel horrified by and sorry for the Daleks. A small thing is that when the Dalek appears in the transmat and we start to see it slowly appear, we don't just see the outline of a Dalek as we know it and its casing, we see the insides as well, almost like an X-ray, and the shape of a Dalek is really disgusting. Like, you can see like a mangled shape, and it's bigger than a squid in that it stretches through its entire body and almost through up into some sort of a meshed brain. There's something that you can't really see it clearly, so it's something that almost looks like a little hand stretching out to the front. It's
like a claw.
It looks like uncomfortably squashed in. And it creates that slight claustrophobic sense that like now we have a squid that almost like sits quite comfortably in the middle. It's a good size for its casing. This one almost looks like it's pressed up to the edges, like it barely fits. And something about that is really horrible to me. Very like deformed and grotesque. And later on as well, when they destroy one of those, they destroy all the 3 Daleks that have surrounded Ace, and they go up to it and they're like, oh my god, there's something inside this one, and they're kind of peeking in, and they never show us exactly what's inside, which is also really effective. But they kind of describe it. So something reaches out and it starts choking the Doctor, and they start battering it with a baseball bat. Hey, get off! And they bat it back in, and then he's like, stop, like, he's already dead. And she's like describing it, and she's like, oh my god, like it's wired up to some sort of machine. Sick. Just so, but I like that
so
she's
gross.
like trying to like scientifically describe like, okay, so it's got some sort of like it's so horrible. And then the other
It's so
thing
grim.
is I have to mention the special weapons Dalek. I just think, oof, what a beast,
yeah.
what a tank, quite literally. Love, so sick. The way this bad boy just chomps his, I'm sorry to glamorize the Daleks, because I also appreciate as well we're talking about, fascists, but chomps his way through this week, blasting through the doors, takes out 2 Daleks at once. I remember once I was so intrigued by the special weapons Dalek, and I was like, oh, like special weapons Dalek, why aren't they all special weapons Daleks? And there's a piece of lore, and I don't know if it came from like a Dalek encyclopedia or something, or some like very like semi-unofficial source, but it was like, oh, bad news, to be able to fire that aggressively and have that much like of a tank, there's like more radiation going on inside, so the special weapons Daleks basically are completely insane because they can't see, they can't talk, they can't interact, and they're just a massive weapon, and so they just go mental.
Yeah, I believe it. You do need a reason in lore why they don't all have those weapons. What I find interesting, because I agree with you, I think it is sick. In Big Finish, non Big Finish cover art, you see loads of different other Dalek like variants. Like you see the big like Imperial Dalek and Mega Dalek and Super Megatron and Ultra Mega Super Duper Daleks, and you do wonder why they don't just all like pimp them all out. And I think that the reason is that you need something to do with the mutant inside that like restrains you. What I love as well about the Daleks in this episode, not just that they're gross and threatening, but they remind you that they're a species with beliefs and laws and like opinions, and having a Dalek civil war, like for 2 reasons I really, really like it. One is it's just like cool to see these 2 different factions of the Dalek race fighting each other, and I love episodes where they do that. They kind of like have Daleks disagreeing with what is the most level of pure. It happens in Evolution of the Daleks, happens in Revolution of the Daleks. I enjoy those stories, but specifically this in like 1960s Britain, you have the racist undertone with the human characters, like Race realizing that she's staying with racists when they have the sign saying that only white people are allowed to stay in the hotel. And even just on paper, they are white Daleks versus black Daleks. Like you had grey Daleks and gold Daleks and all these different colors, but for this kind of story to specifically have white versus black Daleks, I thought was really interesting. And it's not something they shied away from. They have that line where it says, you can tell that the Daleks are into racial purity. And it just felt like in an episode like this, in a time like this, in a time zone like this, it felt like a really interesting story to tell. But then you also have scenes with the Doctor and Ace where it's like, let's go tell which blobs are winning. So you kind of have both sides of the coin.
Yes. I thought that was a really effective way of describing what was going on, though. So, yes, I thought the same stuff. They make a really great social commentary and integrate it really well into the context of the 60s and segregation. It's not, I think, painfully like labored. The point of what they're doing is just made very clearly and really well baked into the story, delivered very matter-of-factly. When Ace finds that sign, it's very simple but very effective. She reads that horrible sign, no colours on the window, and then she's like going to go up to the housekeeper, and she's like, hi, but whatever her name is, and then she's just like, oh yes dear, what is it? And she's like, oh my god, like I think in that moment you can almost read that she's like this seemingly very sweet little old lady who's in the room next door looking after me. Oh, can I make you a cup of tea? Da, 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 da. Is dreadfully racist. It's just, I know, it's a very good way of bringing you back to keeping those themes in mind. And as well, like explicitly having Nazis propping up the Daleks when I've forgotten the leader of the fascist group, his name, but he says,
Mike.
Country.
No, the other guy. Yeah, the other guy.
The other guy. He says, oh, this country supported the wrong side in the last war. And that's kind of all he really had to say. I'm like, right, Nazi, got it. And then I like Ace being able to just like bubble that down to just be like, just recap the techno babble of the episode and just where we're at, just in case you've lost track. But also just kind of the absurdity of it. She says, Imperial Daleks are bionic blobs with bits added. You can tell the Daleks are into racial purity. So one lot of Daleks reckon the other lot of blobs are too different. They're mutants, not pure in their blobbiness. Doctor, result. Ace, they hate each other's chromosomes. War to the death. So it kind of pokes at the absurdity of what they're doing as well, that this is all a pretty pointless fight.
Yeah, exactly. And in hand with that, the stupidity and the pointlessness of racism in general. And I feel like it's just really interesting that TV in the 80s, I think, arguably handles a topic like this even better. And I'm not saying like one necessarily is better than the other or things that have come since are worse, but it's a really great way of saying what you're saying without even necessarily saying it. And when it boils it down to like these blobs are angry at those blobs because of their blobbiness being different to their blobbiness, it's weirdly spoon fed to us in a way that doesn't feel spoon fed. I can't really describe it better than that, but I thought that it was really well handled.
I think you just trust your audience to receive the point you're making. And I think it's a point that you always have to keep making when it's the Daleks as well. Because that really is like tied to their inception as a creature. So when they come back, they shouldn't really come back and stray too far from, at their core, what they're about, which is ultimately a very evil purpose. Now, this will follow me probably at like 10 different points on the pod being like, make them a comedy character, make them a comedy character. Don't make them a comedy character. I'm kidding. Undo.
I retract all previous statements. Well, I'll tell you what wasn't funny. This little girl that becomes the Dalek battle computer. Like, when you see her and you have that really horrible, like, ring around, following her around. It's so creepy. I knew, like I said, I'd seen this episode as a kid, but I didn't really remember it. But I'd watched more recently and more regularly as a child, More Than 30 Years in the TARDIS, which, again, please, if you're a listener and you've watched that, let us know, because I would love to cover that on Wholala. I don't think Alice has seen it. I really want to talk about it. But I remember them revealing that she was like a Dalek's battle computer. And I just thought that was really interesting, and it must have felt quite unexpected at the time, like thinking maybe, I mean, I guess she was kind of hypnotized, but it's not just that she's hypnotized, because you kind of have a Scasis paradigm kind of dialogue of like, the Daleks need ingenuity, they need creativity, so they plug a kid into the computer and they can use their brain as the battle computer. And I think that's a really interesting concept. But then she like shoots lasers out of her hand, and I was oh my god, like she has the Emperor Palpatine powers.
They upgraded that. I know. When she went Palpatine, and they dropped it in so casually as well. Like someone's running from her and she's like, I'm like, oh my goodness me. And she does it twice. And she misses on Ace as well. But she was great. She was scary.
It's not even a Dalek power.
it's brand new Palpatine powers. She actually already had those before the Daleks arrived. And that's why
they were just like, thank God we got the girl with electricity hands.
Yeah, like, oh my God, that's really helpful, actually. I thought probably the most effective part of her inclusion was actually at the very end. So when the Dalek, when the Doctor once again is talking the Dalek into killing itself, and it's imploding and spinning in circles and like can't compute the fact that it's the last one and doesn't know what to do and doesn't know like what its purpose is, and then it explodes. She at the same time is having the same crisis. I guess the whole like Dalek hive mind is imploding at that moment, and so the Dalek programming in her is freaking out. And watching a Dalek spin around and go is one thing, but then seeing like a child spin and like scream in pain is really uncomfortable. So it creates actually on one side that level of pity actually for the fate of the Daleks in this story, because though they do it through this like horrible filtered voice, they also come to quite a grisly end. But then when this innocent child who's just, I guess, been like used by the Daleks in this story, when she's also like, I mean, I thought she died to start with when she like collapses on the floor and then Ace goes over to her. I was like, oh my God, they killed the kid. But she appears to have kind of survived it, but like in what state, who knows? And who knows how much she remembers of having killed other people as well as like an 8-9-year-old girl.
Trauma.
So, trauma, like, I mean, what a scary character, but also what like a sad, what like a tragic character too.
Yeah, I know. It's another case of like something's just interesting and creepy on the surface, and then when you deep it for more than a second, you're like, oh God, that like really has some levels to it. I mean, talking about like deeping it and getting into the thick of it, to go to the end of the episode when we have kind of that really doctory speech with Davros. I love they reveal it's Davros, and I was like, gag, as if I don't have an action figure of him in that exact like.
Oh my God.
I was like, oh my God, it's Davros. I will say that like Davros's voice. We were talking about this before we started recording. And I can never remember whether I said it on mic or not, but I'll say it again. The bit when she's talking with the battle computer head and she's like, "Oh yes," that sounds very Davrosy now. And then when Davros comes in, he's just talking very Dalek-y. And I do get that it's like he's stripped away so much of his like quote unquote humanity to the point where he basically is just a Dalek now. But it's interesting seeing the evolution of Davros. And apparently, and I really would like to listen to this, there's a big Finnish series, I think from the 90s or maybe the early noughties before Doctor Who came back, which is all about Davros, and you're just following Davros. Because you always, I feel like, see Davros in the middle of a Dalek story. But having something focused more on him as a character, I think, would be really, really interesting. But yeah, what happens with the Doctor and Davros in the end of this, just it gets intense.
It gets very intense. I was going to say, in this story, it's interesting because you are not left with a good feeling about the resolution, because the Doctor, while neutralizing the threat of the Daleks, doesn't act in what we now know to be a very Doctor-y way. In that it feels that the Doctor, and this kind of came through as well in previous episodes we watched, but in Classic Who seems a lot happier to be violent and like kill enemies, ultimately, even indirectly kill an enemy in defeating them. Destroying Skaro is absolutely brutal of an ending, to be like, oh yeah, I scorched the planet and I made the sun go supernova, and there we go. And so of course Ace is like, did we do a good thing or not? And then having to like find the last Dalek and talk to it until it implodes, and then kind of smugly kind of poke at the ash that's left behind, do a witty one-liner, and then walk off. So I was pretty shocked, like when you really think about like what the Doctor's willing to do at this point versus later on. They're like horrified by the War Doctor and the things the War Doctor has supposedly done in the Time War, but I kind of feel like the War Doctor probably isn't that far away from what the Seventh Doctor is willing to do.
No, exactly. I mean, it, like I said, it's a very Doctor-y choice, but I don't know. It's indirectly killing is the good way of describing it, because he doesn't, stick them with a sword or shoot them with a gun, but he knows what the Hand of Omega will do, and he wants them to have it. He says to Ace, like, my plan is for them to end up with it, because he knows that they can't deal with the power. And I like the idea, like I was saying before, about them wanting Time Lord technology. They want to harness the energy of a sun to basically have the power of a Time Lords and eradicate the Time Lords. And like we were saying, much as it wasn't the rightest intention at the time, that feels like it sets up the Time War very well, where their intention is to wipe out the Time Lords and to become the new Lords of Time. And what ends up happening is that their race eradicated, it destroys Skaro, which I completely forget happened in this. Like, it fully vaporizes Skaro, then it gets sent back to kill Davros and the remainder of the Daleks. Obviously, we saw that Davros escaped on an escape capsule, which is funny because normally in Classic Who they just kill Davros and then bring him back again. Yeah. But it's interesting seeing the Doctor being so willing to do that, and when Davros sort of starts begging him for help, he's like, "No, Davros, you brought this on yourself." And I thought it was interesting seeing the parallels from that compared to Journey's End, when the 10-2 has committed genocide on the Daleks and Davros is about to die, and the 10th Doctor, who's not sort of born from war, like shouts at him to come with him. He's like, Davros, please, like, I can save you, come with me. And I think watching episodes like this makes me have a deeper respect for those episodes and a deeper understanding for those, because we always sort of talk about Classic Who and Modern Who as two different entities, but that Doctor is still built upon what all these Doctors did. And so to see a post-Remembrance of the Daleks and post-Time War Doctor act like 10 does in that scene makes a lot more sense here.
Which is convenient, because I don't know how the 10th Doctor would have actually solved the Daleks without his alter self destroying them.
Oh, they would have won.
There's enough Daleks to slaughter the cosmos. And he doesn't lisp. He does the cosmos.
Not even a trace. Not even a whisper.
Daleks to slaughter the cosmos. And how would he have resolved that without that? I don't know.
I don't know.
Probably couldn't have done
Unlimited rice pudding!
He would have looped the TARDIS around them and towed them into the void, I think would be the answer, while the Song for Earth plays.
Yeah. I liked in this one the bit when the Daleks get destroyed, and I'm like, oh, that's cool, end of the story. And then he goes back to Earth, and there's that one more Supreme Dalek, and I'm like, oh, I forgot about the other ones. There's the other one.
One more left.
One more.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, but then the episode ends off the back of that, where the Doctor's effectively committed genocide against the Daleks. And that's, oh my God, the transition from ashes to ashes, dust to dust to a funeral was like rogue. It was insane. For Ace to then say, Doctor, we did good, didn't we? He goes, yes, only time will tell. Like, watching that now, knowing where they went with the show is so... I
Yes.
really, really like that ending.
It sets up the Time War very, very, very nicely. There's a few, we were texting about this as well earlier. I read a really interesting Reddit thread. I'm sorry, guys, but our Gallifrey is a really great place with a lot of great theories, a lot of great threads. Sorry to be that Redditor. But there was a thread today where someone asked, is it ever said how or when the Time War starts? I know that it starts a little before 8 regenerates, but do any of the books or audios ever show exactly how or when the Time War starts, or how the Doctor found out about it? And someone responded and said, from the Doctor's perspective, there's an audio called The Starship of Theseus, showed that the start of the war looked a lot more abrupt. 1 minute, the Doctor and his companion Sheena were investigating nefarious dealings on a luxury cruise liner. The next moment, history had changed. Sheena was erased from existence, the cruise ship became a refugee vessel fleeing the Daleks, and the Time War had already been happening for a while. And I thought that was really interesting because a lot of the time in the Time War, they talk about like, oh, the Time War is happening everywhere all at once. Like, not everyone's aware of it happening, but all the higher beings of the universe all know it's going on. And it's kind of happening everywhere. Nowhere's safe from it. And when it ends, if the Daleks win, like, everything's over, game over. And I love that idea that as it began, it had almost already started. So in that blink of an eye moment, it was as if it had always been happening. So I like that very like non-linear view of it, that you'd already be part of a story and suddenly your companion's already gone, never happened, and the place you're in is something else completely, and you're already 10 years into the war because the war has now started. Do you know what I mean? Like a very weird Doctor Who way of approaching it chronologically.
Yeah, I'm just looking up as we're talking about it. It comes from a series called The Eighth Doctor Time War, and then that's from Volume 1, where it acts as sort of a prequel. It's effectively the last chapter of the Eighth Doctor's story before Night of the Doctor, and then before going into the War Doctor stories. And you do very much like crack, but when you start the first story, like you said, you're not in the Time War, and then all of a sudden they realize suddenly, oh no, we're in the Time War, like everything has changed. And it is really interesting to see it happening from the Doctor's perspective. I like the idea that like his actions have ramifications in creating the Time War, but he's not even necessarily aware that it's happening. It's going on, and then suddenly it happens, and then like you said, it's always happened. And I think there's some really dark stuff. It's interesting because they covered it so much in Big Finish audio that I don't think they ever will on screen. And I feel like what we got in the 50th, like it's just a lot of like pew pew, where it's a lot darker than that. And I would just love someone to maybe make a short film or something, or the BBC to make just like a one-off short of like a snapshot of the Time War, maybe even without the Doctor in it, just what that meant. I just think that would be such an interesting visual.
Again, you can't really like show the Time War on screen because A, it's meant to be so horrific that it's a very adult content. It's a very 18 rated story. And then equally, you'd have to almost show it through lots of small stories to show personal stakes across different times, different planets. And they've done some of that, I think, with the War Doctor's audio stories as well. You do get bits of that too. So it probably actually translates better to audio.
Yeah, maybe. I'd love to see maybe like a kind of I think is it Star Wars Legends, or the animated series where every single episode is a different animation studio. Arbon have done a couple of them for Star Wars. I'd maybe like something like that where you see different people's perspective, and I don't know. It's interesting. I'd like to see it. But yeah. Before we dive into Camp Damp and Fun Facts and stuff, I wanted to talk for a second about Dursley McLinden. Now, when we were looking into the research episode, and I'm not going to lie, I started this research before I saw Hamish's message say, I'd recommend you read into this. I was like, who is this handsome man on my screen? So I looked into him a bit, and I'm really glad I did. So Dursley McLinden was an actor born in the 60s, and he played Sergeant Mike Smith in this episode of Doctor Who. And he ended up being at least partially an influence for Ollie Alexander's character in Years and Years, the series that Russell T Davies the series that Russell T Davies made, because he was a guy born on the Isle of Man, moved to London, became an actor, and unfortunately died from complications of HIV and AIDS. He fell ill in 1988 and was diagnosed with HIV/AIDS in 1990. As a result of that, he raised money for West End Cares, a theatrical arm of the AIDS charity crusade, and he continued working up until a few weeks before his death, and he was only 30 years old when he died. And having watched years and years before knowing about his story, it's so interesting seeing the quite deliberate parallels where Ollie Alexander's character is an actor who moved from the Isle of Wight, I believe, in that, small town island, moving to London. And there's a scene where he is fighting the Daleks and he's filming an episode of Doctor Who. And at the time, watching it and not knowing Dursley's story, I was just like, oh, that's cool. Russell loves Doctor Who and he's putting Doctor Who into his show. But to see so much of an influence of this actor in that work was really, really interesting to see. So I'm really glad looking into this episode gave me a chance to find out more about his story.
Yeah, it was really sad to realize, I think last week and this week, in both the stories that we found, there was someone who was a victim of AIDS, either behind the screen or on the screen. Last week we talked about John Lewis, the composer. This week, Dursley McLinden. And I did remember that in It's a Sin, that Doctor Who scene was deliberately included as a tribute to Dursley. I read elsewhere, someone I think who had known him personally had written to say that they felt that the character that Ollie Alexander has in It's a Sin actually captures Dursley's energy quite well, broadly as well, which is nice. Russell T Davies was a close friend of his. They met through a mutual friend. So, yeah, beyond that, I think there was some inspiration there as well for Richie. There was also a tweet-along that was done in the early 2021 lockdown, and it was the fan group Friends of Ace, and they did a fundraising tweet-along in memory of McLinden and others who died young. And they've raised money for the charity, the Terence Higgins Trust, which is really lovely. There's a documentary as well I've not seen. It's called Looking for Dursley, and amongst those who share their memories are his sisters, Russ T Davies and Sophie Aldred and Nicola Bryant as well contribute to that.
It's difficult because we sometimes, especially as queer people, watch shows like It's a Sin and we learn about it and it feels so distant to where we are now. And it's little moments like this where it's like, oh, who's that fit guy on my TV? I'm watching this basically with fresh eyes for the new time, and finding out about this as it was happening, it kind of reminds you of what was going on behind the scenes and what people were going through in their everyday lives. And I think linking it to something like Years and Years and making it a character that so many people will see in the 20th century can really give a second life and rehumanize people like Dursley. So I was really glad that Russell sort of wrote that into his character.
Yeah, it's a really sad story. I'm really glad that Russell was able to write in a tribute. I think in It's a Sin, I think that was really nice that was done. But yeah, it's a very sad story. I actually wanted to touch on a few other quick story points before we move on. I was going to mention as well some of the supporting cast. Gwen's dad is in this, if you know Gwen Cooper from Torchwood, played by William Thomas, appears once again. And I feel like he's had maybe 3 roles in Doctor Who.
Oh, yeah, he's in Boomtown. He's the guy who's like, it's like they're trying to blow it up on purpose. I swear somebody's trying to do this deliberately.
So that's his second of 3. Then we have Joseph Marcel playing John in the Cafe, otherwise known as Jeffrey Butler, the butler on the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I was like, oh, yeah. What's he doing there? Then was there anyone else in the supporting cast? I think my other note was just to say that I really enjoyed Professor Rachel Jensen as a character. Not that was someone I recognised, but I just thought that was great. There was some other really minor points. One, I noticed the Doctor says he's 900, and I thought, wow, we really have no consistency on the aging whatsoever in Doctor Who, and that's absolutely fine. A brief moment I enjoyed was the Doctor using a Dalek plunger to maneuver the Dalek controls. I've never seen that done before, where the Doctor basically hijacks a Dalek plunger to actually twiddle with the controls that are only fitted for a plunger. That was quite fun.
Yeah.
Also have to mention 2 things. One, the 80s synth soundtrack absolutely goes off. It sounds like someone is actively DJing most of this episode, with a keyboard. At parts of this, I was like, ooh, this one's got a little beat to it. I enjoyed that a lot. And then finally, I think we've talked about this throughout, but the effects are fantastic in the story. The spaceship landing particularly, I was looking at that and I was like, I actually don't know how they did that. That looks too expensive for Doctor Who.
I think it was a full size. I was trying to work out whether it was a miniature that they green screened on, but I think because then you have it open on the floor and Daleks coming out. I'm like, I feel like they might have just built a big prop and then filmed it from the front on getting lowered down. It's really, really good. And when it docks into the spaceship as well, like when it goes back up.
I know, and when it goes back up, that's usually where Doctor Who would like reverse the shot in the most obvious way, and the smoke could be going the wrong way, and they'd be like, "Oh, that's fine. That's just what the Dalek ship does when it goes up." And you'd go, "Yeah, sure." But it looked like they bothered to film it twice as well. And I was thinking, where are the ropes? Where are the wires? So it's one of those you enjoy more because you can see it's clearly practical. Yeah. And you're like, how did they do it? Which is so much more interesting than a fairly good CGI.
I agree. I know we're cutting it fine, but I want to play a little game.
Oh, a little game.
A little game of Camp or Down. For anyone who hasn't listened to Wholala before, we like to play a little game called Camp or Damp, where we look back on moments of the episode we have just watched and we say where they are camp or whether they are damp. Alistair, are you ready to play?
Okay, yeah, I'm ready to play. Go on then.
Okay. Ace and the Doctor driving the truck, camp or damp?
You know what? I hadn't even noticed that this was happening, but you're right. The switcheroo is very funny, that he was just like, I'm sick of you driving. Move over. Get out. Get out.
Get out of my truck. I just love that there's no acknowledgement. It's like, well, if you want to drive, then drive. Cut outside the car, cut back into the car. Suddenly he's driving. They're carrying on their conversation. I just think it's so funny.
I like it a lot.
Ace beating the Dalek with a baseball bat, camp or damp?
Extraordinary. And also, like, very well choreographed. Like, it's so, like, boosh, boosh, swing around, smack off the eye stalk, boosh. There's so many parts in this where there's knock off an ear. Needless action in this. There's a part where the Doctor goes like, Ace, get away from the window! And instead of just like walking around the science lab desks, she jumps up onto one, kicks over about 6 glasses, and then runs across 3 of them that way. And then 5 minutes passes, and then the window explodes. But I love the action in this.
It's so good. And finally, Palpatine hands, camp or damp?
Palpatine hands are good. My quote that is like my little like vocal stem I keep saying at the moment, and I do it in weird places. I'll be talking to boyfriend, but we go around the supermarket and we'll just go like, no, you will not. No. No. What's it? Is it? Does it go, you will die? I can't remember what it is he says next.
No, you will die. Something like that.
Yeah,
I haven't seen Star Wars in a while.
No.
It's so funny to me.
Yeah.
Well, I've also got a few fun facts for you.
Okay.
Ben Aronovich, the writer of the episode, he considered making use of some other Dalek continuity elements, including the Thals and the Ogrons, which the Thals I don't think have been in it since the 3rd Doctor's era, and the Ogrons had only ever been used once for quite an iconic character. And he rejected them for fear of overcomplicating the story, which I do think was the right way to go. I think you just have Daleks versus Daleks, and that's like enough. As well as if you'd have like a battle computer and stuff. This is the first example of the skeleton effect being used from the Dalek weapon. So it would then be used in every other Dalek story. So from every other New Who story, when you get exterminated by a Dalek, you get that shot where you see the skeleton. But this is the first time they'd ever used it. Another example of it being a real pioneer for New Who.
I did notice that actually, because previously in Doctor Who, I feel like they've always inverted the entire screen. And in this one, this is where they began inverting the body and showing a skeleton. And it looks fantastic. So good, really so good. Scary. And it makes it just feel like such like a horrid, painful death.
I know.
Oh, one thing. There's another detail in this, don't they? Where they're like, he goes over to someone who's been killed and he's like, ooh, it says like, oh, internal rearrangement or something. He's like, oh, the organs are in the wrong places. So like, no, not for me.
I really liked Ben Aronovich. This is to do with fun facts. I really liked him pulling on classic lore. He said that the subplot involving racism and fascism in Britain was inspired by Terry Nation, originally based on the Daleks and the Nazis. And one element that I really appreciated with the Doctor is that he wanted him to be the commanding centre of the episode rather than being like pushed and pulled by the story, as it felt like it had happened in other Doctor Who Dalek episodes where things just kind of happen to the Doctor and he's like bumbling through. Whereas in this, it's very much the Doctor instigating what they're going to do. And I thought that was a nice element to see, especially with a villain like the Daleks.
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Hurtle. We hope you enjoyed our trip through every single one of the classic Doctor Who Doctors. We have already looked at the Doctor Who TV movie. You can go back there. We've watched every single episode of The Ninth Doctor. We've watched all of Series 1, and then we've watched many different episodes from 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. They are all in the back catalogue. Next week, we've got a few things we're talking about. I would quite like to dedicate a whole episode to the Time War and have a look into expansive lore and see what we saw on screen, what we've seen off screen, what we've just heard about. How do you feel about that, Alistair? I'm in the mood for that, especially with back of this.
I could do that. I could go for it. I'd be almost alarmed by the amount of audio stuff to cover on the TARDIS wiki, but it's possible.
It's possible. I mean, look, I've got a little list of stuff I want to do. I really want to do more than 30 years in the TARDIS. I think that's a really fun one that we could do. There's the Doctor Who Dalek movies coming off the back of Dalek. We've also wanted to do the Series 3 three-parter for a while. Utopia, Sound Drums, Last of the Time Lords. That we're going to interview. Speaking of picking up series, we also have our Wholala series where we go back through companions through the eras, and we currently are sat with Bill and Nardole. We could give them a look. So make sure you reach out to us on all of our socials. We're at HolalaPod everyone. Let us know, what would you like to see from us next week? We are on X, we're on Blue Sky, we're on Instagram, TikTok, everywhere at HolalaPod. And please email us your Doctor Who fan anecdotes and thoughts at hoolalapod@gmail.com.
Yes, let us know. In fact, let us know if you fancy another what if type episode. That was quite fun last time.
Ooh, that's fun.
And if you want a what if, you're going to have to propose the what if for us to answer as well. And we'll go ahead and have a look at that. But yeah, in the meantime, if you enjoyed the episode, please go ahead and rate us 5 stars. We really do appreciate it, especially on Apple Podcasts. But for some reason, we're lagging. So go and sort that out.
Yeah.
Follow us to get notified when we drop new episodes. You can also be very generous and buy us a coffee, KO-FI. If you'd like to buy us a coffee, up to you. Otherwise, go ahead and share the episode with someone who you think will really enjoy it and say, I think this is the best Doctor Who podcast I've ever heard.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for doing all of that. Thank you so much for listening. And we will see you very soon.
See you very soon.
Bye.
Bye.